Happy New Year and welcome to Follow We Will Legends Podcast 2022. And we're on to our 6th podcast now, this Thursday evening with myself, Lynsey Glenn and Stan Gordon, featuring the greatest ever Rangers legends as our special guests, Rangers supporters clubs and bars from all around the world. Sponsored by AVA Signs, from concept to completion, developing, manufacturing and installing quality signage throughout the UK with clients like Glasgow Rangers Football Club and Castore, and that's just to name a few. You can visit their website at aviasigns.com. We also have our amazing associate sponsors of the show. Check out their social media pages too. We have Spotlight Events, Airnock Builders, Country Carpets, Hepburn Electrics, Millencroft Constructions, First Class Memorabilia, Pollock Projects, The Gallant Pioneer Blackpool, Off to the Match I Go and Staunch Threads. Remember, if you're on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to our show, or if you're on any social media platform, remember to like, comment and share. Our star joining this evening was well known as Casper, the friendly ghost. The way that he ghosted past defenders. Mr. Gordon Smith, how are you doing, Gordon?
Fine, Lynsey, I'm good, thank you.
It's great to have you on the
Good
show.
to have you on the show, Gordon.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And also, folks, as well, we have another competition for you. We have this Rangers book here, 10 matches, 10 players. The best question to Gordon tonight, if you get all your questions in, Vicky will get them on the screen for us, and you will win this fantastic book, and it's worth a read. All right, so let's get the show on the road.
Gordon, Kilwinning. You
Yes.
were born in Kilwinning, yeah?
I was born there, yeah.
Yeah.
Brought up in Stevenston, though.
Yeah, well, they're both known as big Rangers areas. Were you a Rangers fan as a boy, or were you Kilmarnock?
I started off as Kilmarnock because my family were all Kilmarnock. My grandpa had played for Kilmarnock, and he'd won 2 Scottish Cup medals playing for Kilmarnock. He was captain the second time they won it, so unfortunately he was dead before I was born, so I never got the chance to speak to him. But it was always a kind of motivational thing. But I became a Rangers fan quite early on, actually. I got taken to a Kilmarnock Rangers game when I was about 8 years old, I think it was. And I saw the player that I wanted to copy, and it was Jim Baxter. I became a massive Jim Baxter fan. And it was the funniest thing was that I started to use my left foot all the time because I wanted to be like him. And it was I went to play for a kids' team, and the manager said to me, you know, son, you're a good player, but you're too one-footed. You need to start using your other foot. And he was quite surprised how quickly I could use my other foot because I was naturally right-footed. But it was the best thing ever for me because it turned out, as my career went on, because I'd been used to using my left foot as a kid, I was a 2-footed player, and it suited me down to the ground. I mean, I ended up being in the wing, playing for Kilmarnock, the left wing, and the manager, even Willie Fernie, he said to me, I'm putting the left wing, son, and I said, I don't want to play there, I want to play in the middle. He goes, I need to put you there, son, I need a left-footed player in the left wing.
And you were right footed.
I said, I'm no left footed. He went, yeah. It was a great argument. I look back now, it was a compliment, you know. But I became a Jim Baxter fan early on, and that's why I became a Rangers fan. My dad was a big Kilmarnock supporter, and I didn't tell him I was a Rangers fan until I signed for Rangers.
Is that right?
I went home that day and told him. He was like, what?
So in 1977, you joined Rangers for £65,000. You went on to win the domestic treble that year, 27 goals from midfield.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a real thrill. It was quite a funny thing how the move came about. I just started a new job. I did a business degree, and I was 10 days in a job as a marketing development manager. When the phone rang in the morning, it was early morning, about 9 o'clock, 8:30, and it was Willie Fernie, the Kilmarnock manager, and he said, where are you? And I said, well, you've rung me, you should know where I am. He says, no, he says, the secretary gave me your number. I said, I'm at my work. He said, you in Glasgow? I went, yeah. He said, you far from Ibrox? I said, no, why? He says, just sold you to Rangers. I'll see you there. I'll see you there in an hour's time. That's how I get told.
And that was you?
That was it. So I went to my bosses and said, look, I've got to nip out for a minute. Something's turned up that I've got to deal with. Got in my car, drove along to Ibrox, which wasn't far along the road, and went in to see Jock Wallace. And, you know, I didn't even see the contract or anything. I was just so delighted to sign. But the strangest thing was when he shook my hand and said, welcome to the club, Gordon. He says, that's taken a while. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, I've been trying to sign you for the last 4 years. Did you not know? I was like, no. He says, I've been in for 4 years. I've been trying to get you. I didn't know that. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to ask you. I said, I'm the left wing for Kilmarnock, and I didn't want to say anything until I signed. You've signed Davy Cooper, and why have you signed me? He goes, no, I'm playing you in the midfield. You're going to play middle of midfield. He said, because he said a very interesting comment. He said, I will never forget it. He said, "You're the last piece of the jigsaw." That's what he actually said.
Is it?
Yeah, you're the last piece of the jigsaw. I was like, really? And then it was an interesting system we played, because what happened was he put me in the midfield. I was in the centre of the midfield, and with Bobby Russell and Alec McDonald on either side of me, and then with two wingers, and Davy Cooper and Tommy McLean, and Derek Johnson was on his own up front. But I was given the role to come from midfield deeper and go and support Derek Johnson, which I was able to do that role. And once I get in the team, that was my role. And a lot of people to this day still think I was playing as a striker, and I wasn't. If you look at the pictures, I'm back in midfield when we're not in possession of the ball, and I made my runs from deeper. Now, what was good about it was the fact that I think that was the reason I got a lot of goals. Was the fact I wasn't getting picked up the same, because they weren't really expecting at times a midfield player to be getting forward at times. So that's why, and it turned out to be a great season for me.
You also scored the winning goal as well, 1978 Scottish League Cup final against Celtic. Can you tell our viewers about that, how that felt for you, and who was in your team at that time?
Oh, it was a great thrill that day, because that was my first cup final. Actually, we were doing well in the league, and obviously we got through to the final with the League Cup and playing against Celtic. You know, I'd actually, it was quite good, because my debut against Celtic, my first ever Old Firm game, was an amazing one, because we were down 2-0 at half time at Ibrox. And I'll never forget this, because we came in at half time.
Big Edvalson, wasn't it?
Yeah, Edvalson scored the 2 goals. And what happened was, I thought, managers usually, when you're losing, the managers usually give you hell. But Big Jock Wallace was totally different. It was like he was sit down, and I thought, here we go. And it was the most positive team talk I've ever heard when you're losing. It was like, I can't believe you're getting beaten. You're the better team. You're fitter than them. You're better players. They've scored 2 lucky goals. If we play like that in the second half, we're going to win this game. And what happened was, we went out. I scored the first goal that day. Derek Johnson got the second, and I got the winner that day. That was my Old Firm debut. So I'd already experienced that great feeling of scoring against Celtic and scoring the winning goal against them. But this was a cup final, and I was desperate to win a cup, because as I said before, my grandpa had won 2, and I was desperate. I know this was a League Cup, not the Scottish Cup, but I couldn't wait to play in it. And then we got into extra time. It was Davy Cooper got the first goal. Evelson equalised that day too, and then we went into extra time, and I think it was 2 minutes to go when I got the winner. And I nearly got injured after the game when Jock Wallace gave me the hug. He grabbed me around the neck and was hugging my and honestly, it was painful. And he was so good, Big Jock. I loved playing for him, and it was such a thrill. And he was so delighted with that win that kicked us off. That was the start of our treble win.
That was the start.
Derek Johnson said that with Big Jock. He hugged his foot, and he said you'd get battered sometimes at the start of a game, and then maybe the last 20 minutes or so, Rangers were all the fitter team.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wondered why he's were going up with sand dune, but they didn't that when you were there at that time.
Oh yeah, that was it. That was the training. But the funny thing was that I look back on it now. It was one day you went to Gullin. Really, it was one day's training. It was the hardest training session ever. It was unbelievably difficult. But I think Jock Wallace used to use that as psychological, because he would say, quite often he would say, see this team you're playing against today, they'll fight hard, they'll work hard, but I'll tell you what, they couldn't do Gullin, this team. They couldn't last there, so you might win the game. And that's why a lot of the times we kept going when teams were playing well against us, but they fell a bit, they couldn't last it, and we won the game late in the game because we were fit. Because Big Jock he was very concerned with fitness. But the funny thing was, what happened was when I signed Jock Wallace, I didn't play. The first game we played was against Young Boys of Bern. I was substitute because I signed on the Monday. Rangers had lost on the Saturday to Aberdeen. Maybe that was a good thing. They signed me because of that. They got beat by Aberdeen in the league. We played Young Boys of Bern. I was on the bench. And then the next Saturday, it was Hibernian at home. And we lost again. Mm-hmm. And then, so that was 2 defeats. First 2 games in the league that season was 2 defeats. And then what happened was we had a running session on the Tuesday. And it was amazing because we came in to the dressing room after this running session we did out in the park. And Davy Cooper was the one, I had him saying it before in my shower, he goes, by the way, don't get in his group for running, pointing at me, he says, he's some runner, right? So I'm in the shower, this is true, I'm in the shower, and all of a sudden they come in and go, you have to come out and get yourself ready. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, there's a race on, you've got to race Peter McLean. Big Peter was our runner.
Is that right? Peter McLean?
Aye, and I went, a race, and he went, yeah, half lap, 200 metre run, because it was a track in those days round it. And I said, okay, so we went on the track, me and Big Peter, and we went across, and all the players were out there. I had to come out and get dry and put my gear on, right? I went across, and we had the race, and I always remember talking about the psychology of things. Big Peter said to me, right, we'll toss up to see who goes in the inside. I went, no, you can be in the inside, Peter, I'm okay with that. And he was like, you're happy to run on the outside? I went, yeah. And so that was psychologically, I did him in right away.
Right, okay.
Right? So we had the race, and I won the race, and Coop was hugging me afterwards, right? And I didn't realise till the Friday we went out for lunch, and he was paying for it because I had put a lot of money on me to win.
To win.
And I didn't know.
They were all putting bets on.
And everybody had bet against me. Everybody had bet against Coop that Peter was going to win. So I won the race. And what happened was, so we did that, and I got my shower the second time, and I'm walking out of Ibrox that day, and here's Smithy. I looked up, it was Jock Wallace at the top of the stair. Come up here. So he shouted me upstairs, and I thought, oh, what's this? And he goes, sit down. And I sat down, and he goes, how come you never told me when you signed you could run like that? And I said, well, you never really asked me, did you? And he says, I was watching at the window, I saw it. He goes, you're playing Saturday.
That's right, yeah. That's brilliant.
So I have to thank Coop, got me in the team.
He got you in, he got you starting.
Because I did that run. So that was how I got in the team. So it was an amazing start to things, and I could, because I was a part-time player when I signed for Rangers, I think Jock Wallace thought my fitness level wouldn't be at the same level. The same as the full-time players, but I trained hard, I was always fit, and that was the thing about my game. I always thought myself, you should be as fit as you can possibly be, because then you play at your best. That's what my opinion was on it.
I mean, DJ had said that Alec McDonald and Sandy, that was probably before you came, Gordon, that everybody used to take their lead off of them at training. Yeah. And if you could keep up a bit with them, you weren't actually too bad. So I take it you kept up with them.
Big Daddy never told you I could run as well, did he? Yeah, no, I could keep up. I was, when I was at school and all that thing, I was a sports champion and all that, and I ran the cross country for Ayrshire schools and things like that. So I was just dedicated to being fit, and I didn't even drink in those days at all. I was 22 years of age, but by the time I went to Rangers, still hadn't touched alcohol. So
brilliant!
I never drank till went to Brighton. Maybe that's what my problem was then.
You were so fit. How many Old Firm games did you score?
In total, I think it was 4.
4.
I scored 4 games.
What was that like for you? Obviously, it must have been an amazing experience.
It's great. I mean, that was one of the things I always looked forward to. I thought, if ever Rangers signed me, I really can't wait to play an Old Firm game, and it's a great experience to play in it. It really is. Atmosphere, and what's expected. If one way or the other, if you win or lose, you don't get out that night, because you're going to get stick for one set or the other. Might even be your own fans that don't want to talk to you, or can't wait to give you a bit of stick. But I think that was one of the greatest things, was to play in an Old Firm game, and certainly to play in a cup final, the first final against them, and beat them.
What about motivation for Old Firm games? Was the Big Joke have you doing anything different for any other game, or did he?
No, really. It was just a case of the motivation was just to say, like, this game's crucial. The fans demand you do your best, and it was all a case of the biggest motivation was just the amount of work you just had to go out there and work your hardest, and that was it. And as I say, that first game, even though we were doing 2-0 at half time, but we hadn't played badly. But I thought, we're going to get a row here, because you generally did. If you weren't winning, you always get into trouble. But whatever every experience I ever had was, and even after that time, it was generally most clubs. If you're losing at half time, you get a row. You know what I mean? So I think it's maybe to try and get you going again. But Big Job, it was the most positive one I've ever heard.
All right, aye. Any time we've had anybody, didn't we? We've had DJ and different ones on here, and anybody that's ever had any time with Big Joke, that they can't speak highly enough about him,
That's the thing about him. The funny thing was that before I went to Rangers, he'd always had this kind of impression of what he was like, big scary character and all that. But Big Jock, he was very, very good. I'll give you 2 examples of how he worked out, how good his management was. We played. I had started scoring goals right away when I signed for Rangers, and I had a good wee run. And then we were playing against St Mirren during that time when I was having a good run of scoring. And at half time we're losing 1-0, and he was having a wee bit of a go that day. And he suddenly he pulled my shirt and he pulled me out my seat, and he says, "See, when I say we're not playing well, I'm talking to everybody." And he put me back down, right? He must have seen in my face, I'm saying, "No, well, I'm doing well, it's no me."
And it was everybody.
Yeah, so that was me getting a wee message there. And then the next time, I never forgot, it was maybe a couple of months later, I was playing a game, and I obviously hadn't played that well, and I was sitting there, must have been with a wee bit depressed face after the game at full time, and he grabbed my shirt again, and he pulled me out the seat, and he says, assume you gave me the effort, you gave me the day, son, you'll always be in this team.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
There's the psychology of turning it around to when you're in downer, he gives you a lift. And another time I was on a high and he just put me down just to say no, and that was a measure of him. I think management was excellent.
Good management skills, definitely.
What about young boys coming through at that time when you came to the club? Were there some good young ones coming through at the time?
Fun enough, John McDonnell was beginning to come through, but the funny thing was we were the youngsters that went into that team, because what happened was it was a very mature team in a lot of ways, because it was a lot of them had played in the 72 Cup final. So you had guys like you Peter McCloy, Sandy Jardine, Tom Forsyth, Colin Jackson, John Gregg was in that team, Tommy McLean, Alec MacDonald. So me, David Cooper and Bobby Russell became the sort of youngsters. We all got signed at the same time. And I'll never forget that. It was quite funny. The first game I was on the bench and we were playing against young boys at Bern. I'm just watching the game, and I must have been about 15 minutes into it. I said to somebody, who's our number 8 again? And he went, that's Bobby Russell. I says, he's really good. And he went, Stein for Shettleston.
That's right. And I was in football.
He's at Shettleston Juniors, and he's now controlling a European game. Yeah, and that was a measure. I don't know how nobody really picked him up, but Rangers did and got him for Shettleston, and he was outstanding. So as I say, there was 3 of us. We were the 3 youngest. Bobby was probably the youngest of the 3 of us. Then Coop, then me, and then the next oldest was Derek Johnson. And then after that, the guys were all mature and had been there for quite some time. Players coming through after that was like Ali Dawson came through, John McDonald, Billy Mackay came through, wee winger Billy. So it was Davy Armour came, but he never quite made it through. So they were in the outskirts of it, but there wasn't as many changes in those days. See, the team, it hardly changed at all from week to week. It was almost the same team that was getting picked, and it was only if somebody was injured or whatever. I mean, Derek Paulin was there at that time, Alec Miller were there, and they only came in the team if somebody was out injured, really. So Derek, if Derek Johnson was having to maybe even play centre half first because Colin Jackson was out, for example, Derek Paulin came in and played up front. That's how he did.
We had Derek on a few weeks ago, didn't we? How good a striker was he?
He was excellent. He was terrific, and that was the thing. For a guy like that to be mainly a substitute that season, it showed you how well Derek Johnson was doing. Because Derek, I scored 27. I think Derek scored 38. Derek Johnson. So, but Derek Paulin was top class. And the funny thing was, the semi-final of that League Cup, we beat Celtic in the final. In the semi-final, we played forfeit, and we're losing 2-1 with about 5 minutes to go. Yeah. And Derek Paulin equalised that night and into extra time. And I'll never forget this. It was quite funny. The final whistle went, and the forfeit players come up to shake our hands after thinking the game was over. We went, "Hey, there's extra time, boys," and they were like, "Oh no, there's no extra time, is there?"
No.
And so we sat down. We went, "They've gone." By the way, they thought it was all over. We won 5-2 in the end.
That's right. Yeah.
Remember that?
Was that a match?
Yeah.
We had that match.
So they just thought it was the game was over at 2 each.
Were you involved in the Hibs when we played Hibs free?
I'm afraid I was.
That was amazing.
You know what happened? It was incredible. I had to cancel my holiday, and I couldn't get the money back on it because it was the third game was when I was meant to be away on holiday, because we didn't realise in those days there was no extra time. It was like, it was no penalty kicks. It was extra time, but
that's right. And
then another game.
Three games.
3 games was it? Right.
I remember, but see, the worst thing about that month, actually, I remember checking up not that long ago and find out we'd actually played. I think we'd played about 8 games that month because of games that had been cancelled during the summer, and that was the season when we lost the last league game against Celtic at Celtic Park. When a draw. That's right.
10 men.
10 men they went to, and they beat us. I couldn't believe it. But we were, and there's no doubt about it, we were tired out that season because of fixtures that had been cancelled. Even our European run, which was great, got spoiled because of it. Games cancelled, and we lost to Cologne in the quarterfinals of the Cup after beating PSV Eindhoven and Juventus, when 2 of the teams that were actually expected and favourites to win it.
You spoke about Bobby Russell there, the ball through. Was it McLean put it through for Bobby Russell at Eindhoven? They were European.
They'd never lost. They'd never been beaten at home.
Never been beat at Eindhoven.
No,
just beat them.
That's right.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
What about the man you were speaking about there, Davy Cooper are the fans' favourite. How did you get on?
Well,
with him?
there's a guy that
sorry.
there's a wee is it, what's his name? Bim Skimming has asked, could you ask Gordon how good it was to play with Super Coop?
He was tremendous. I mean, I could see right away in him. But the thing about it was quite funny. I had to take him aside in the early days when I came into Rangers because he found it quite hard to deal with the stick you get from your fellow teammates because it is banter and all that. But Coop had not been used to it, whereas I had been. I'd been brought up in a full-time club dressing room and all that sort of thing. But, even my early days at Kilmarnock. And I was used to getting abuse from the older players, but Coop wasn't. And I had to take him aside one time and say, "Listen, they're just having a laugh. They're just trying to make it. You've got to hit back at them." And he went, "Really?" And I goes, "Yeah." And he goes, I said, "Don't take it seriously. Just say something back and we'll soon shut up." Because I used to do that. I'd got experience that. I remember Big Peter McLean one day, even when I was there at first, he was giving me stick. And he says, midfield player, he says, if I was a midfield player, I'd have 50 caps. And I said, Peter, if you'd been a goalie, you'd have 50 caps. Right? So there was that kind of banter. And once you hit back...
So he didn't know how to take that kind of humour?
He didn't know, and I had to take him aside, because as I say, we became good friends quite early, because say from that very first week when he made a lot of money on me because of my run, we were close. And we went for lunch a lot of times. And I just think he was a special player. There's no doubt about it. He'd such a great talent. And there's an example, as I say, I was lucky that I became two-footed. Coop, I don't even know if he could kick. He was always right foot, because I don't think I ever remember seeing him kicking it.
Yeah.
But his movement was all to keep the ball on his left side, a bit like Lionel Messi or Maradona, the very same thing. Mm-hmm. And he had a great striker of a ball, and he could see he made a lot of goals for me.
Yeah. I can see one here, and I can see where he's coming from. But he's coming from here, Gordon. You were a football agent for a time. Can you tell us your best signing, and also if any went on to play for Rangers? Now, before you answer that, what I've got to say is Tam Black is Wally Black's brother that we talked about earlier, right? So.
Well, there was one youngster who I'd just done a new deal from at Hibernian, and I got him a nice little rise, and then all of a sudden, about 2 months later, I got a call from David Murray saying we want to buy Kenny Miller.
Kenny Miller,
I was his agent, and he said we want to buy him, and I said, well, I'll ask Kenny if he's interested in coming. Kenny went, yeah, definitely. So I said to David, he's interested. I did the deal, and then, because what happens normally, it's still probably the case, the club phone you up and say they arrange and negotiate the contract first so that they don't get embarrassed making the bid for the player and then not being able to come to terms with the player. So it's all done in advance, right? So what happened was, by the time David Murray went in for Kenny Miller, it was all done, and Kenny just went to and signed. But I looked after young Stevie Smith, and I looked after Jonathan Johansson.
Yeah, two good lads, two good boys.
And Stephen Presley when he was at Hearts as well, sort of thing. So good ones. Rangers fans are not too happy. I had Craig Burley and Paul Lambert as well. So I like that. But they were good players, and I knew them both pretty well.
440,000. It was a record at the time.
Yep.
You went for Rangers to Brighton. Did you want to go?
No,
it's an
amazing story, Stan. I'll tell you. I was at home. My little boy was a month old, so we didn't have booked any summer holiday. I just signed a 5-year contract. I was a month into a 5-year contract when John Gregg phoned me at the house and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just in the house. He goes, will you do me a favour? I went, what is it? He says, will you go down to Brighton and speak to Alan Mullery, the manager? He's a big pal of mine. Played against him a few times when he was playing for England. He goes, I don't want to sell you, but go and speak to him just as a favour. And I went, okay. So I went down, but I hadn't thought in at the time. Davy Provan, who was the Rangers' Davy Provan, was a coach at the time. He came with me, so we went down, picked up in a big limo, chauffeur driven, taken to Brighton. Alan Mullery's waiting in, and I sat in with him. And I won't get into details now, but I kept saying no, the offer I was getting, and I was at 3 times my Rangers' wages and a huge signing on fee, and I'm still saying no, I'm not coming. So we went, okay, go and have lunch, he said, and we'll talk after lunch. So I went with David Provan for lunch, and they'd arranged it at this hotel, and Davey said to me, that's some money, Gordon. I went, I know, this is unbelievable, isn't it? I said, compared to what I'm on at Rangers. He said, you're not thinking of taking it? I said, I'm not taking it. And he goes, all right, I might as well tell you, the deal's done. I said, what do you mean the deal's done? He says, we've agreed the fee, and you've got to go. And I went, that's not what John Gregg told me. So I phoned Ibrox, Greggy comes on the phone. First thing he says is, "Have you signed?" I went, "I'm not signing." "Aye, yeah." I said, "I'm not." He says, "Yeah." He says, "If you don't sign, I'll make your life hell." He said, "You'll not play in the first team again." He said, "You won't even play in the reserves. I'll have you in the morning, noon, and night training." And I said, "I can't believe this. That's not what you told me." I says, "How long's your contract?" And he went, "What do you mean?" I goes, "Well, I've just signed 5 years. Will you still be there 5 years?" And he goes, "Well, you want to take a chance on it? I'm at least there for the next 3 years." He says, "So you're going to have 3 years of hell or sign?" And I went, "I can't believe this." So I went back to Davey, to Alan Mullery, and I said, "I've had a consideration of it and I'll sign." So I signed the contract, and as I say, when I got home that night, my wife's like, "How are you doing?" I said, "I better sit down. We're moving to Brighton." You know? but the amazing thing was, this is an incredible part of it. He said to me, he says, I've been in all this year. He said, "I've made 7 bids for you this year." And I was like, "I didn't know that." And he goes, "They never told you?" And I went, "No." He says, "I'll tell you another thing as well." He said, "I actually saw you playing. The reason I put in the bids," he says, "I want you." He says, "I saw you playing 2 games for Rangers. You scored 3 goals." And he says, "And Davy Cooper made the 3. And I went, "Oh yeah, him and I got on well. He makes the goals." He goes, "Well," he says, "I was in for you both." I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, I offered money for you both." And I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Rangers said you can only have 1. And he says, "I'm taking you." And I went, "Well, you get a ring 1 then." That's what I said. But so Coop and I could have been there together at Brighton. But it was a big move, you know. It was. But I must be honest, I've spoken to John Gregg since, and I've thanked him because I did enjoy my time there. It was a great place to go and play. It was a marvellous place to live. Great bunch of guys. Every player who was signed for Brighton had all been signed from other clubs, and we actually all lived within a mile of each other. So, you know, unlike Rangers, where guys were coming from Edinburgh and all over Scotland, even in the day of the training, in Brighton, we were all just like living practically on top of each other, and it was a great socialisation and a great life.
Is that when you started drinking then at Brighton
Yes.
as well?
Yeah. I know why. The first night out, it's true, the first night out, the boys were like, "Right, what are you drinking?" And I went, "I'll have a Coke." And they went, "No, we're having a drink." I says, "Yeah, Coca-Cola." They went, "You don't drink?" And I went, "No." And they went, "And you're Scottish and you don't drink?"
I was just about to say that. I'm very surprised it took you to go to Brighton to have your first
I was
drink.
now 25 years of age. So what happened was I said, "Coca-Cola." They came back from the bar with all the drinks, right? And they put the drinks down. I went, "Where's mine?" They went, "We don't buy soft drinks."
That was you.
That was me. So the first few nights out, I was moan kitty. And then about the 3rd or 4th night out, I said, "I'll have a shandy." And that was my first ever alcoholic drink. I had a shandy. But see, the drinking culture down there, it was unbelievable. Honestly, the
that's
players,
a great place to.
The players, I'd never known anything like it. I mean, some of them were 7 days a week drinkers. I'm not joking. It was even a Friday night. Some of them were drinking before a game.
Before the game?
Yeah. So I wasn't that bad, but I mean, some of them were heavy. But that's where I started. Other thing I took up down there was golf. I'd never played golf till I went down there, and I became a fair weather golfer because the weather down there is a lot better than it is up here, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a chap on, Keith Hamilton, saying played against Gordon under 13. He played with Prestwick Star. They beat us 13-0, but Gordon failed to score. He was mad, unfortunately. I was moss blown. And I think he's just put the goalkeeper with loads of wee crying faces.
I can't imagine I failed to score in a 13-0 win. Prestwick Star was good. The guy who put it together was almost like it was a mixture of all different boys for Ayrshire. There wasn't a single Prestwick boy in the team, and it was almost like an Ayrshire schools team. It was, and we were really good. And Kilmarnock Football Club took over the team and became Kilmarnock Star after that. And we went and we won the first ever Easter Craigs youth tournament that with that team sort of thing. And it was, say, quite 2 or 3 of them became professionals, different clubs. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, you did return to Rangers on loan.
Hold on, sorry.
You want to
I was going to ask.
Right, on you go.
The one that's you're known famous for in Brighton, unfortunately, is the miss in the FA Cup final. And they actually called their fanzine "And Smith must score."
That's what the commentator said.
Yeah, and I know you scored the first goal that day, didn't you?
Yeah.
It was Man United, wasn't it? What happened there?
A lot of people forget that I scored the first goal because it's mainly mentioned about my miss. And every time I'm down in Brighton, I do some stuff down there and speaking, and I always apologise. But the Brighton fans are really good. They go, no, you scored for us. You helped us get the final, and you played well. But so the Brighton fans are great, but everywhere else I go, it's like it gets a mention, you know. But it's just so funny, as I say, because it was a big game, and I still, it probably is my biggest football regret in my life that I didn't score that day. Because see, if I'd scored, I'd probably still be mayor of Brighton now if I'd scored that goal. But the fanzine was called "And Smith must score" because that's what the commentator said. It was the radio commentator that said "And Smith must score," and he didn't. And it went to a replay, and we got well beaten. But it was a fantastic. The funny thing was, I tell you how I knew it was going to be, how significant it was. About 2 years later, I was at Manchester City, right? We'll talk about that later on. But we're over in Kuala Lumpur, and we're all sitting between games. We're all sitting sunbathing around the swimming pool. And there was this little kid coming around getting autographs, and he came up to me, "Autograph, please." And I was like, "Okay," I signed it, gave him it. I said, "Thank you." Shut my eyes because I'm sunbathing. He goes, "You're Gordon Smith?" And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "How are you missing cup final?" And I said, I turned around, my teammates were falling off their beds laughing. No. And I said, "Did you tell him to say that?" And they were like, "No, nobody had told him." The boy just, but the thing about it was, it's amazing. The FA Cup final in those days was a world event. It really was. I mean, it was probably one of the biggest matches, TV matches everywhere. And even when I went to the States, like year 2, 3 years later, people would say, "Oh, you're Gordon Smith, you're Man City, but were you not at Brighton? Did you not play in that cup?" I went, "Yeah, I know what you're going to say." And how did I miss that chance? I went, "Yeah." So it became famous, no doubt about it. And as I say, it's still one of my biggest regrets. I would love to have scored it.
Was Alec Ferguson the manager at the time?
No, it was Ron Atkinson.
Was it Ron Atkinson?
Yeah.
Ron, yeah. I remember watching it at the time, but obviously it was different for Brighton fans.
I know. But the funny thing was, I did an interview about 10, 15 years ago and with the goalkeeper, and Bailey, he's now in South Africa, that's where he's from, and he said, I'm always raging. And he said, "I never ever get the credit for my save." He says, "God, it's always Gordon's." And I went, I wish you did get more credit for your save.
To take the heat off of you a wee bit.
Because even, the funny thing was, even one time, this British Airways magazine and the plane did a piece on it, and what they said on it was, and Smith missed an open goal with only in the last minute of the game. And I got in touch with them and said it wasn't an open goal.
I know, the
goalkeeper saved it. Right? But no, they said an open goal, so it gets worse, doesn't it? Yeah.
Aye, so right, I can move on, right. Yeah. So you returned to Rangers on loan. How did that work out for you?
Well, it was the same season as that cup final, and what happened was I'd fallen out with the manager at Brighton, Chris. It was Mike Bailey's name was, and him and I weren't getting on, so I wasn't playing for 2 or 3 games. The next thing was I got a phone call from Tommy McLean saying, and he was assistant manager to John Gregg, and he said, "We'd like you to come back for a month's loan." And I was like, "Really?" And he goes, I said, "Right, okay." So I said, "I'll come back to you on it." I went along to see Jim Amelia, he was the head scout at Brighton, and I said, "Look," I said, "I've had a phone call from Rangers to go back on a month's loan." It was December, right? And he went, "Go back, Gordon." He says, "You'll be with the family over Christmas in Scotland." He says, "You'll have a month there." He says, "And I'll tell you something I want you to keep a secret." And I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "See, when you come back in a month's time, I'll be manager. Mike Bailey's getting sacked." I was like, "Seriously?" And he went, "Yeah, don't tell MD." I went, "Okay." So I'll get in touch with Tom McLean. I went, "Hi, Tommy," I says, "I've decided I'm coming up for a month. I'm coming to do my month's loan." He went, "Right, that's great." I says, "So I'll see you Monday then." He went, "Why Monday?" I went, "Well, I know you've got a cup final on Saturday, so I'll be up on the Monday." And he went, "No,
you're
up for the cup final."
You're up for it.
Yeah, I was shocked by that, and it was one of those things. To be honest with you, I was also thinking I shouldn't be doing this. Really, you know why? Because I'm thinking to myself, if I'm playing in that final, it means somebody's been left out that was involved in helping the team get to the final.
To where it is.
Yeah, so I didn't think it was fair that I was actually going to be playing, but I said, "Okay, I'll come up now," because he wanted me up there. Tommy McLean talked me into it. Tommy and I got on well because he was even a Kilmarnock player when I started training with Kilmarnock. So I knew Tommy very well. So I came back up. I was quite surprised John Gregg did that because after what had happened between the two of us before. So I played in that final and it didn't really work out for us. I got brought down for the free kick that got us a goal. We got beat 2-1 though. I think Murdo McLeod and Charlie Nicholas were the goal scorers for them, and Jim Bett scored from our free kick. Yeah. But what the strange thing was, I was at this was maybe about 10 years ago. I was just out with some friends. We were at a pub thing, and it was a quiz, and they were asking different questions. And one of the questions that came up at the pub, they went, "Right, here's one for you." It says, "There's only one player ever has played in 2 cup finals in the same season in 2 different countries." And the people at my table went, "Any idea, Gordon?" I went, Well, actually, I did. I don't know. And they put me down, and it was quite funny because when the quizmaster's going, only one team got this right. That table over there, and we all started laughing. He went, "What's funny?" And he goes, "I'll tell you what's funny. He's here." And I never knew till that question was asked that I was the only player ever who's played in 2 cup finals the same season.
Two different
countries. Lost them both. Right enough, but
you still played in them though.
Still played in 2 finals, yeah.
You went to Man City.
How
good was that?
It was good because I say that it was a big move for me. The reason I went to Man City was mainly because I'd enjoyed the Rangers scenario. Brighton was different in respect. There was no real derby at Brighton. You know what I mean? It was like a decent club, nice sized club, lovely place to live. But Man City for me was like doing the Rangers thing again, going back to the big club. So I decided to go there and play, and it worked out well for me there as well. I finished top scorer my first season with City, and I got to play alongside Paulin again. Derek was at City.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, Jim Melrose was there at City at the time. Jim Talmy, another Scottish player. Neil McNabb, who had been at Spurs. So I got to play with a few Scots lads, and I enjoyed my time at City. It was a big club to play for, great place. It was in quite a rough area of Manchester at that time. They moved the stadium now, but at that time it was in Moss Side, which was really, really rough, scary. You know, you could hardly, even the parked cars at the car park, at the football ground had to have somebody out watching the cars all the time. It really was, in those days, that was a very rough area of Manchester, you know.
Did you do a derby? Did you play Man United?
Only once, yeah. Only played once.
How did you go?
A draw, one each draw.
Not bad.
Wasn't too bad. Didn't
was
score
it
either.
Old Trafford?
Old Trafford, yeah.
How did you find that?
It was good. I'd already played there a few times, but it was good to play in a derby game. But the Man City was also, Main Road was a great atmosphere as well, because it was the days of, like, you know, only one stand with people sitting. The rest of the ground was all standing, so it was always a really big atmosphere at Main Road. And funny enough, Manchester City was the kind of Manchester club, whereas United are mainly they're a worldwide club. United, you know, their fans come from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And the fan base for Man City is mainly in Manchester, isn't it?
Correct. That's it. The fan base is Manchester based, sort of thing. So they were the real Manchester club. But I liked playing for them. It was a great experience. As I say, the only problem was I got an illness there. I got a thing called osteomyelitis there, and I was out. I missed the last game of the season, and what happened was I was in hospital for 2 weeks. Then I was in bed at home for about another 4 weeks. And most of the time, people were saying you don't recover from that. I had it in my pelvic bone osteomyelitis, but I did recover from it. But while I was out the team, even at the start of next season, a young boy called Paul Simpson came in, and he did really well in the team, and he developed and stayed in the team and became a top player. So what happened was he took my position. So when I got back fit, Billy McNeil said to me, you know, I'm not putting you in the team anymore. And then I get the chance to go to Oldham on loan. Joe Royal came in and said, I want you to come to Oldham on loan, and that's when I went there.
Yeah. But you could fast forward 30 years and think of the kind of transfer fee and the money you'd be getting at Man City just now.
Well, do you know the funny thing about it?
The money now is compared to...
I'll tell you the funniest thing, I had to take a cut in wages to go from Brighton to Man City. They couldn't afford my Brighton wages then.
Is that right?
That just shows the difference.
Now.
I know.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you see what like the boy Grealish is getting there. You know, like a phenomenal amount of money. You know, it's over 200,000 a week.
Is that what it is? 200. I remember I went with Rangers to Hong Kong for the Hong Kong Sevens, and I was sitting with Mark Walters, and I was taking the Rangers Legends, and the boy Grealish was playing for the youth team against Rangers for the Aston Villa, and I remember Mark Walters saying to me, watch this young guy coming on the middle of the park. And that was only 16, 17 at the time.
Like a player then as well.
Absolutely outstanding. He get player of the tournament.
Did he?
And they actually won it. Unbelievable. And Chelsea was there, and Man City and all them, you know, but he just showed up against
the money's phenomenal now. I mean, you're right. You say, even in Brighton, what Brighton players get paid now, I know for a fact, I've spoken to some people, they think, my goodness, I mean, we were well paid. We were like above average, but nothing like even what they get nowadays, was, you know, they're getting like 50, 60 grand a week and all that, sometimes more. You know, you think
unbelievable.
3 million, 4 million pound a week.
And some of the times, I mean, I do a lot of stuff, and you're friendly with them, wee Wally Johnson and Colin Steen. I mean, you see guys like that. I mean, if they would have made it this time.
Oh, I know. Phenomenal they would have been. They definitely would have been. I know, to get to the top level in the game, no doubt.
The type of guys ended up came back as joiners and labouring to bricklayers and all that after their career, and they played in European finals. And when you think of how it's progressed over the years now, the way football is,
there wasn't enough money at all in our day to retire after you stopped playing. You know, no doubt about it. Even as I say, I actually, you know, took a drop to go to Man City because I wanted to go to Man City, even though it was the funniest thing was, I'll tell you how the move happened there. I was also, once again, this was a bad habit I had, falling out with managers. I fell out with the Brighton manager, right? And what happened was, I wasn't even training with the first team, and all of a sudden it was a Friday, and the assistant manager was Sammy Nelson. He said to me, "You're coming with us today," and I went, "What, the first team?" He went, "Yeah." So I went with the first team squad. Then they put the sheet up on the wall of who's all going for the match. We're going to Derby. The next game was against Derby County. I'm in the squad to go on the travel. Couldn't understand it. So I played the next day. I go to the game and I play against Derby, and we won 3-0 and I scored. And on the next day, on the Sunday, I got a phone call from Billy McNeil, and he said, "Hi Gordon," he said, "I see you were playing yesterday." I went, "Yeah, Billy," I says, "I was." And he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I put a bid in for you on Thursday." I thought, oh, that's why I was playing.
That's
right. So what happened was on the Monday, the manager, Chris Catlin, calls me in and he says, just to let you know, Gordon, he says, "I've had a call from Man City." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "What did you?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But I don't want to sell you." He goes, "See how you played on Saturday?" He says, "You were absolutely outstanding. What a great goal you scored." And I went, "Hang on a second." I says, when did you get this call?" And he was like, "Well, it was Thursday." And I went, "Oh, really?" I says, "So that's why I was playing Saturday. Not because you wanted me in the team, because Man City then for me, I'm going to Man City." And he went, "No, I want you to stay." I said, "I'm not staying." So that was it. That's how we did the deal. Mm-hmm. Because it was just, that was the way it works in football, you know. But as I say, we're talking about earlier on about you never find out these things. That was one of the few occasions when I did. I was at a dinner about 15, 16 years ago, and Tommy Docherty was speaking. And Tommy Docherty, during his speech, he just suddenly went, "This is in Hilton in Glasgow," and he goes, "I see Gordon Smith there. I tried to sign Gordon as manager of Man United." Right, and I was like, so I went up afterwards and I said, "Hi Tommy." He goes, "Hi Gordon." I went, "See what you said up there?" He goes, "Yeah." I goes, he says, "Do you not know?" And I went, "No." He says, "I can't believe you never get told." And I went, "No." He goes, "You were 19 years old playing for Kilmarnock." He says, "I offered 100,000 for you." It was a Friday, and Kilmarnock said, "Right, the deal's done. Can Gordon play for us tomorrow? And we'll complete it on Monday." And he went, "Okay." He says, "You must have played well." And I went, "Why?" And he goes, "When I went back on the Monday, they wanted more money." And he said, "Wait a minute here. We agreed £100,000 on Friday. That's the deal." He said, they still tried to negotiate. He says, "If you don't stop this, I'm putting the phone down." And he said they didn't, and he said, "I put the phone down." And there was me.
And they never even told you?
No, I'd been retired for about 15 years before I found out.
You couldn't get away with that now on social media and all that?
No, you wouldn't, because the agents now as well, there's agents and all that, you know.
And to think 65,000 going to Rangers,
3 years after
agreed.
3 years after they turned down 100.
Yeah. See Bartley Gray there, he's for East Belfast, saying hello to the team there. It's good to see you listening in again, Bartley.
Hi Bartley, hiya.
We've got a couple of good mentions coming here, events that's coming up. Big Scott Nisbet, he's opened a new Rangers bar in Play La Blanca.
All right.
We had him on a couple of weeks ago there, and he's doing well with the cancer. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, and he's got kind of all clear in a lot of areas.
Oh, that's good.
His body, so it's the Terrace Bar. Myself and me Wally's been in it.
He was looking well. He was looking well. The Facebook thing that got put up.
He's opening the bar there in the next few weeks. So any Rangers fans that are listening and they're over in Lanzarote.
I was actually just talking about that pub because I was there actually when my son Alistair was only 2, and we were in that. It's the one up the stairs, and you know, it's like quite long into it.
It's really nice.
Pub. Aye,
it's good. Yeah,
Lanzarote.
We went there. It must have been about 4 years ago, and a Big Scott was helping out in it. And I took a 7-a-side team of Rangers and a 7-a-side England side to play in a tournament earlier. And Big Nizzy had set all the facilities up for us. And the first day we got there, we walked in and introduced me to the guy who owned the bar at the time. And he went, "You don't pay for any drinks, Stan." He says, "Just you go up to the bar." So we Durant's here into Fergie. Alec Ray doesn't drink right enough, and all the rest of the boys. We John McDonald was there and all. And the goalie and whatever. So he says, "You don't buy a drink, just go up to the bar and say Rangers." But we Wally Black and all the boys for Blantyre where I Stuyberod, they had Dockemore for the tournament. So I helped them. So the next morning, I met the guy who owns the bar. I said, "How's things?" I said, all right last night. He said, all right. He says, €1,400.
Cost them.
Rangers. He says, you'll not be doing that
Again, no wonder.
But, so if anybody's about, drop in and see the big man. He'll always make you welcome. And it's good to see another Rangers bar opening. And then I've got Miss D's, is a new Rangers bar that's opened up in Lanark. Have you been up there yet, Gordon?
No.
It's just opened back up. I was up a few weeks ago there with Mark Haley. And it was a good wee night. And she's turned it into a Rangers bar. She's going to get you up there. She's going to have speakers on maybe every once a month and that. So I never put the date down for that. I think it is the 26th of February for that one. And it's Derek Ferguson and Charlie Miller. And then we've got the Gar Craig pub on the 9th of January. Big Tam is Alec Ray and Derek Ferguson. So if Big Tam's listening, it was meant to be Ian Durant, but he's getting in for an operation. He's getting his knee done.
He done again.
And Rangers are looking after him there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get wee Derek to fall in there. And I've got another one in the 20th. That's that one. Then I've got the Aliyah Casino, Bud Steenie, 22nd of January. Line Rangers are doing that one. And then we've got the White Inch Orange Hall Speakers Night. We've got Marvin and Charlie Miller. And contact Andrew Reid for that one. Then we've got the Gallant Pioneer. And they've got loads coming up there the next few months. Are you going down next?
Is it March?
Aye, I think it kicks off. And then
once in March.
Yeah, I think he's got a dinner coming off there. And
two weekends, I know what it is.
Assistant at Blackpool, yeah.
That what it is now, yeah.
Aye. So we'll go to some questions now. Do you think the crowds will be back?
Hard to say. I think hopefully they make the sensible approach to it, because I say we're locked down much more than they are in England. And look at the crowds at games in England; it's unbelievable. They're getting full stadiums, and yet why are they not worried about it? Why do they not think there's a problem with it? So I also said that I did a piece in the paper saying even the fact is that there should be a percentage of the stadium allowed in rather than suddenly making it 500. Because I said you could take a pub could have an event. Outdoor event. They said if it's outdoor, you're allowed 500 people. They could squeeze 500 into a garden, and everybody's really close to each other. But they're allowed that. When you take a football stadium, 50,000 stadium, and you put 500 people, it's stupid. It's crazy. They should make it even a percentage, 10%, 20%, depending on how severe the whole situation is.
I was at the match, and what I found strange, what you're saying there, is we went through the front door at Ibrox and we got up the stairs and we sat down and get our dinner, and the 500 that they had at the game was all in the main stand, apart from maybe 20 people at the other side. So see the Copeland and the Broomland, there was nobody in them.
Nobody in them, I know. That's crazy, isn't it?
And Partick Thistle could have had 500 at the game that day, and they've not got a 2,000 seater or a 3,000 seater.
I know.
So Rangers were actually getting punished.
I know.
The size of it.
No, the one when the last thing when the last part of when the shutdown came, Queen's Park, for example. Now they weren't allowed aimed into their games. Now their crowd generally is 700, 800 people. Hampden Park, right? They could put the whole their general their normal crowd could all come in there and been spread out miles from each other. You think about it, and they were allowed nobody into the game. So as I say, there's no real logic behind.
There'd been no logic the whole pandemic. No. I don't think.
No, I mean there's probably more people in Asda over a day.
I know.
Than what was at Ibrox that day.
Correct. That's the problem with it.
They've not made a decision yet whether the fans are all going to come back, and
the clubs are thinking twice even about setting up if the fans aren't getting back in. I mean, I even saw some of the paper today were saying that some of the clubs are considering playing in England.
That was that rugby club that was saying that, wasn't it?
Go and play in England. So I think
we'll go to Newcastle.
Yeah, go to Newcastle.
And the rugby
hire the stadium.
Honestly. Just a wee question here as well, Gordon. I've got what's your thoughts on Gio?
I'm delighted with his appointment, to be honest with you. I'll tell you why. Because I think if you actually compare him to Steven Gerrard, you have to say Steven Gerrard did well, but in terms of the two of them and where they've been and their experience, they're miles apart. Steven Gerrard was a youth coach. He played all his football at one club, right? Great club, obviously. Different managers he would learn from. But Gio van Bronckhorst has played in 4 countries. at the highest level, and he's also been a manager at the highest level as well. And he was successful in the countries he's played in, so he's got a much greater experience than even Steven Gerrard had coming into the job. So I think it's a first-class appointment. I really do. And I've seen, even in the way they've been playing of late, is actually an improvement in it. Because I'll tell you one of the things I noticed, that one of the aspects of it is very important. Is I went and used to watch Barcelona play a few times just to try and study what they did, how they were so good. And one of the things that was great about the way Barcelona played is the players are always getting close to each other. So when somebody's in possession of the ball, they've got options, close options. They can just pass it, little passes.
Yep.
The number of times you see a game and you see somebody on the ball and he's looking up, and there's nobody near him.
And then it's the high balls.
Yeah. So but I noticed that Rangers are getting round about, and it looks as if maybe there's a little bit of the Barcelona style in that play. And Gio would have that in his mind from his time there, because he played at a time when they were coming through to be a great side. I mean, he tells a great story about a game he plays. It was a fantastic story. So he asked about his memories. I was at a thing one night and he was talking, and he said, "What's your great memories?" He says a friendly game, he said, because it was an international weekend. He says all the players were away, but he says Holland didn't have a game. He says, so I thought of a weekend off. I didn't. They arranged the game against Porto. I had to go and play. He said, we went to Porto. He says, it was one each game, nothing in it. He says, 20 minutes to go, brought on 2 young kids. One of them destroyed Porto in the last 20 minutes. We won 4-1. It was Lionel Messi. Right? A little kid, he said he'd never seen him playing before. He was totally shocked. It was a great story. And I was like, wow. Brilliant. That's what he said. It was Lionel Messi came on and destroyed Porto in 20 minute spell. Right? And that for me, that was a measure of where Gio's been as well. The standard of he's been at and who he's played along with.
We've got a couple there. We've got a great show, Gordon Spiff. Very interesting stuff with John McCormick there. And we've got another one there with SNP, but we're not really wanting to.
No, we're not going into politics.
We've got Tam Blatterglen back again there. But we are in the January transfer window, Gordon. In your opinion, what current player can we not afford to let go?
Well, I think that looking at it, Kamara's done really well. He's been outstanding, isn't he? Sort of thing. So, but I don't think anybody will. I was sorry to see Nathan Patterson go to an extent, but I can understand why it happened, because the boy isn't going to progress if Tav's going to be playing all the time. The boy is not going to progress there, so he's better being away somewhere else. And the second part of it is Rangers made really good money on him, and it's vital in terms of maybe doing new contracts with players. So from that point of view, I think that you'd want to keep mainly your main players. I think. I'm still not sure about Morelos. I must be honest with you. I think my understanding is he's lost a bit of weight since Tav came in, and since Gio's come in, and he's actually looking a bit sharper now. And I think that he maybe get him doing it, and he maybe get him back to what he should be capable of.
When Reid Durant was on a few weeks ago, that's what he said. He said, I watched him on the Saturday and he looked overweight. He said, and then he played the following Saturday and he looked as if he'd lost a stone. He said, how did he lose as much weight? He just looked sharper and fitter.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, as I say, I've always believed in it, that you're at your best when you're at your fittest as well, and that's why it's crucial. As I say, I see somebody was asking about my time in Switzerland, in Austria and Switzerland, and they were miles ahead when I went over there in terms of the fitness levels and all that. They could measure you. And the teams of doctors in taking blood from your ear, working out the lactic acid, which demonstrates your recovery from exercise and all that. And I get put in the top group. But one of the things that was quite strange about in Austria was I couldn't speak German when I went there. None of my teammates or the manager anybody could speak, so I had to get a translator. It was basically the reverend at the club was the only person that spoke English. But what I said to him was, I said, they put me in the top group, and we used to train harder than anybody else at the club, and I went and complained about it, and the manager said, you're all training at the same level. I got with this interpreter, and I said we're all training. I said, I'm doing much more than other people. And he says, we're going on your heart rate and all that. And I said, well, that means on a Saturday though, in a match day, I must be able to do more than some of the people I'm playing alongside then. And he says, that's a good point you're making there. He says, so we need to get maybe more people back into the top group. So I thought, well, that's good, but we were training really hard, because they said you're at a level of fitness, you have to do more than anybody else to in order that you're competing, because that's one of the things that maybe is wrong. It's maybe a bit different now with all the sports science we have now, but in my day there wasn't that at all. And whatever a training session we got, some people could do it, others were struggling. You know, so we weren't all training at the same level. No.
That was actually Richie. It was actually Richie that put that up. Me and Stan were in Austria. Couldn't speak a word, Gordon.
Well, I got fluent because none of them. It was a great thing. None of them got. As I say, I had to learn it because that was the only way I could communicate. It took me a while, but after about 6 months, I was fluent in German. And it was quite funny, when I was at the SFA at one time, we did a big fixtures meeting over in Holland for the World Cup. And it was quite funny because the Dutch guy, they were the main seed, and he said, we'll do this meeting in English, okay? And all of a sudden, the guy from Lithuania says in German, he goes, I don't speak, do you speak German? And the Dutch guy went, yes, I do. He goes, I only speak Lithuanian and German. And he says, I'll translate for you. So during the meeting, the guy from Lithuania says to the Dutch guy in German, he says, what time of year does Scotland not like to play their games? He says, well, their season's over in May, so they don't like to play in June. He says, tell them that that's the only time we can play them in June. I knew exactly. So when he finished, the Dutch guy said it in English, he goes, my friend from Lithuania says, the only time they can play you. And then I answered back in German, you've seen their faces.
Oh, brilliant.
That was Greg Morrison that asked that question. I didn't see that earlier. It was, how was it later in your career? It was Greg Morrison that asked you that question.
Yeah.
That was a good question, actually.
I was 31 when I went abroad, and I went basically to learn the game. I had a lot in those days I had a lot of interest in terms of becoming a coach. And I thought, if I go abroad, I'll pick up a bit. So I went to Austria first, and then there was a little problem. It was quite an interesting thing because the club that I signed for had difficulty with money-wise because they were an amalgamation of two clubs. I've always argued about this in Scotland when people say, oh, you know, Hearts and Hibs should amalgamate, Dundee United. I said, there was two clubs. It was Admira Vienna and Wacker Vienna amalgamated. Now, their crowds were about 8,000-9,000 each. They amalgamated, and the crowd was about 7,000. So all the people didn't associate with the new club. So they didn't go anymore. So the club were struggling financially.
Stephen Payton there's got one there. You said you're a fair weather golfer. What's your handicap?
17, Stephen. 17.
Oh, well, you're about the same as us then.
Yeah.
Stan, how good was your Christmas party? I'm just changing the subject a wee bit.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic.
Tell the viewers about your Christmas party.
It was great. We've just seen to Gordon there. We had Big Marvin up singing. And we all had a good time, didn't we?
Aye.
And we had Lynsey up singing
If
too.
I can remember. That's
you sing, Lynsey, do you?
Yes, yes. I had Lynsey up. She does all the turns.
Well, I play guitar. I'll need to come and I need to come and accompany you next time.
I did actually meet you one night at the Fernando Rickson evening in the Go Urban Glasgow. Right, I sang at that. So I did. So that was a good event. You were along the road doing something else that night.
Yeah, McDonald that night.
That's
somebody
right.
else.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I dropped in. But I think we're going to wind up now. So you want to do the end of the quiz there?
That's us. So you had a chance to put your questions in, guys, for the book, 10 matches, 10 players. So, Gordon, what question would you like for your winner? What was your favourite question of the show tonight?
Oh, right. Just anything from my career, do you mean to...
No, from the question.
Favourite question.
So, if whoever's asked you the question tonight, and we've...
How was it to play with Super Coop? And you had Tam Black about...
I think probably that could be. I think we'll go for the one that was football agent and best signing. Also, if they went on to play for Rangers, that's a good question.
Yeah, got a good story out of that one as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
They were good questions. Sorry, I never got to answer everything, but as I say, I've enjoyed doing it.
Brilliant. Great. It was good to have you on the show.
Aye, excellent, definitely. So you'll be able to get that to.
Yeah, I'll get it to Tam.
Definitely. All right, so again, if you would like to see more giveaways on the show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share, comment across all of our social media platforms. The more interaction we get, the more prizes that we can obviously give away to yourselves. So just an ending then, thanks very much for joining us here tonight on Follow We Will Legends podcast. It's been a privilege and a pleasure as always. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. We will upload... We will upload near the time the link. Ricky will get that sorted for us, and we'll have more amazing guests joining as surprise guests as well. So a huge thank you to our guest this evening, Mr. Gordon Smith. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I've loved listening to your stories. I'm sure you have as well.
Fantastic.
Stan. Also thanks to Ricky, as always, working behind the scenes hard there, getting your questions up and running for us too. And if you have enjoyed the show tonight, get involved by subscribing to our YouTube, liking our Twitter, Facebook and Instagram pages. Follow We Will Legends podcast. And on behalf of myself, Stan and Gordon, good night and God bless.
Good night.